Welcome to the OC Politics Show, keeping politics bipartisan, local, and on the level.
Good morning. I'm Todd DeVoe.
I'm Joe Matthews.
And we're the hosts of the OC Politics Show. And this week we're talking about the protests, the police reform movement that is going on nationwide, and how's it impacting Orange County, California. And I mean, it really is. It's going to impact us, our little county of Orange County here. And you see a call for this, some police reform. And we're going to discuss a story or a piece that was in the Orange County Register this morning. And I think that we're going to see a lot of things going on because, look, we just saw how Santa Ana Police Department, the union at least, took out a sitting city council member with a recall election and the power of their purse. And we're going to discuss whether it's right or wrong. And we're seeing this reaction, like I said, here in Orange County and also, of course, nationwide. Time for the political whip around. Joe.
Okay, now California DAs called for a ban on police union money and endorsements in prosecutorial elections.
How police unions became such a powerful opponents in the reform efforts.
And then we have New York legislators pledged to reject campaign donations from law enforcement.
And protests in Orange County are focusing on police budgets and show and change. So, I don't know if you guys saw, and we're going to bring in some national news here a little bit because it goes along with this conversation that we're having today. And the Minneapolis, Minnesota, right, where this whole thing started this last few days, really got things going the other day by they have vowed to get rid of their police department. And so what they're going to work on here now is something that is called the Public Safety Committee. And I don't know if you guys have taken history or not in your life. I'm sure you have, or if you remember this, but man, does that fly back to the days of the French Revolution with Maximilien Robespierre, right? With his idea of the Public Safety Committee. And what do they end up doing? What is the famous word that we've gotten out of the French Revolution?
Off with their heads.
The guillotine, right?
The guillotine, yes.
It's a wrestle move and everything. Oh, it hasn't been the guillotine, right? Off with their heads. So, yeah. So are we going to be in a time now where it's off with their heads, and like if you're not PC, they're going to bring you in front of the Public Safety Committee and chop your head off? What do you think, Joe?
Well, it sounds dystopian sounding very much. Like it could be in the future, maybe 100 years from now. You never know. I mean, we haven't learned from our mistake.
I just don't understand. And part of the thing that they want to do in Minnesota is, and you hear this call, by the way, if you look at the protest signs in LA and whatnot, they discuss this idea of getting rid of firearms for law enforcement officers, right? Almost kind of like the bobbies of the old. What do you think? I mean, we're, regardless if you like it or not, the United States, we're a pretty violent society, right? Not just the law enforcement. I mean, people in general. I mean, in this weekend in Chicago, outside of the protest, it was I forgot I don't want to give bad numbers, but there was over 20 something people that were murdered due to gun violence just for a regular weekend, and it's a weekend in Chicago, right? I mean, are people going to want to be police officers if they can't defend themselves, or do you? I mean, so much so that the city, one of the city councilwomen from Minneapolis said, if you call the police because your garage is being broken into, you're a racist. I mean, how far are we going to take this?
Yeah, I saw one that said Thanks for calling. We'll send you thoughts and prayers.
I mean,
Those
Joe,
yeah.
but this,
They're using that leverage on us, though. They're trying to scare us, like, oh, if you defund us, then we can't protect you, and it's a scare tactic. Come on,
I mean,
I mean, really, do you really think that in one day all this stuff is going to happen? No, they're going to have to get together and figure out the midway ground, and taking away the guns is just too implausible. Maybe you'll just give a gun to the sergeant, and then the sergeant is in charge of two people, and the two people show up first, and then the sergeant shows up with his firearm. I don't know.
you see, go ahead.
It's just for all that stuff to happen overnight. I like to wait and see it, and maybe these reforms are what we need right now.
Have you seen The Watchmen, the TV show?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Like, remember the first scene where the guy's asking for permission to get his gun unlocked?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes. It kind of reminds me of something like that. It's like kind of really, I don't know. It's. I tell you something. I definitely. I would not want to be a police officer, and I wouldn't want anybody. I wouldn't recommend anybody go into the field of law enforcement today. I mean, it's just it's a lose-lose. You know what I mean? You can't do anything right. You know, if you do something, and like those guys in Buffalo. Now I know I'm not saying they did anything right, but I mean, they're in the middle of doing something, and the guy gets close to him. They push him. He goes over, and he hits his head. And now those two officers are being charged with assault.
Assault.
Yeah, and then so it's crazy. I mean, like, you almost don't want to do your job. I mean, 54 of them, and that's part of our headlines there. But 54 officers quit their basically what that's a SWAT team. That's they call the emergency response team, but basically it's their SWAT, right? They're still on the job. They're still police officers, but there's no longer that SWAT team. And although we could discuss the concept that the SWAT's being overused in the United States, it's a complete different story. But so tell me, what did the other Joe Matthews have to say?
Yeah, I have a twin, Joe Matthews, but I'm a 2-tier. He's a 1-tier, and he's been a writer, an independent kind of writer that kind of gets picked up here and there. And OC Register picked him up for a story regarding kind of like what we're talking about, and how these police unions are overstepping their bounds. Now, I'm going to read it to you verbatim, just so when there's no confusion. Here we go. Don't doubt California cops when they're reporting looting. They're the experts. Indeed, our state's most successful looters are the police themselves. California's nearly 80,000 sworn police officers have spent decades sacking the treasuries of local governments that employ them. Their escalating salaries, benefits, and pensions are swallowing up municipal budgets and crowding out other services, from libraries to summer programs. Police departments are by far the largest piece of city budgets, often consuming 1/3 of the general fund and half of the discretionary revenues. The police have turned this fiscal dominance into unchecked political power. Police unions, fueled by dues from high salary officers, make campaign contributions that determine local elections. So city council members rarely curb the pay or power of the police who install them in office. The result, in many California places, city government doesn't oversee the police department. The police department oversees city government. There you go.
I mean, but can't we say that about the fire department too? I mean, they're a huge part of the budget. I mean, that's why you see, like, the city of Santa Ana, for instance, when they went away from having their own fire department down to the county fire department. A lot of it's because of the unfunded retirement budgets that come out of this. They're getting 3% at 50, with 90% of their pay, right? So you do 30 years on the job, you retire at 50 years old, and for the rest of your life, you're gonna get 90% of your pay. So if you retire, let's just do easy math, because most of them are making over that. If you retire with say $100,000, that means you're getting $90,000 a year for the rest of your life. And when you die, your spouse continues to get that money, right?
Hmm.
So, so I mean that's for law enforcement too. And again, I'm not saying that people that the people that are putting their lives on the line every day, and their bodies get beat up really bad, right? I mean, I can tell you personally, my shoulders are gone, my knees are gone. I get that part of it, but this is what we're talking about. So my point is that when you start saying, hey, the police unions can't put money into politics, why them? Well, what about teachers unions? I mean, they when they come out and are like, oh, it's for the children, we need a pay raise for the children. Well, that doesn't make sense to me. A pay raise for for your children, for sure. Right. And look, I know, Joe, you were a teacher at a elementary school teacher. I started teaching at the high school level when I started teaching, and now obviously we're both college professors. And then I get that, but my point isn't the practice of it, right? My point isn't the should you or should you not fund them or not fund them, or support them or not support them, right? My point is that now when you're picking on one particular segment, one union out of all the unions, right? Should this be if we're going to take away, because look, we have Citizens United, right? And again, I'm not judging whether you believe Citizens United is good or bad, right? Has stated that money is free speech. So now you are quelling the free speech of the police officers through their union. I mean, am I wrong? I mean, it seems like, I know that everybody, PC wise, I'm probably wrong, right? But I mean, is my logic wrong?
No, I mean, you should have the freedom to spend your money on your campaigns as freely as you want. But I think what's wrong is that a lot of attention is being directed towards the police now. I mean, they've done some things that have made everyone look under a microscope what the police are doing, and have questioned that. And they think if you take away the money, you take away the power. And there's a lot of examples of how this has happened. I mean, look at Mayor Garcetti. He just came out and said, you know what? I don't like the way the police behaves. I'm going to defer $120 $120 million that you're going to get, and I'm actually going to take $150 million and place it into the community and community-based policing. And what does the union do? They don't say, okay, let's work together on this. They say, hey, we question your mental abilities. So it's like, what's going on? Why can't the people spend the money the way the people want to spend the money?
And no, and that's why you have elections, right? That's why you have elections. If Mayor Garcetti believes that's his belief, if he thinks that his constituents feel that way, and he's going to defund the police department, I mean that's what he does. He's the mayor. He's an elected official representing the people of his city. And but we had an elected official in Santa Ana that was representing her city, felt a certain way, and because the union, and again, we talked about this already, but the union comes in and puts their money into it and says no, she doesn't believe the way we should believe, and they got her ousted, right? So now the police union with LA will say, will not have, if this law goes through, if this rule goes through where they cannot use their own money to have their views taken, they won't have the ability to fight against somebody like Mayor Garcetti who's defunding them, because at the end of the day, when politicians want to be elected, and they come over to you and they say, oh, we're going to make our street safe, and they want to wrap themselves around the fire and police department unions, the public safety unions, get their money, get their endorsements, and talk about how we're going to keep the community safe. And then on the other hand, now that it's politically expedient, Mayor Garcetti is now throwing the police department under the bus because it's political expediency. It really just, to me, it speaks a high level of hypocrisy, and it speaks a level of, I'm going to use what I need to use to get elected. And so at this point, it's very, very chic to be anti-police and to be anti-police union. I think, I mean, there are problems, right? And there's tactics that are problematic, and uh, you know, can we um, realistically take a look at police reform that's going to be good for our community? And I think that if you look around in Orange County, and if you do a poll of the 3.5 million people that live in Orange County, I don't think you're going to see them um, be so as anti-police as you see in other cities. That's just my opinion. I mean, in full disclosure, I've worked in public safety for the majority of my life. Um, it's if you look behind me, you can see all those coins and whatnot that have been given to me over the years. So, am I a little bit biased, I suppose, on public safety? Yeah. I think that I would say 99% of the people that get involved in public safety are doing it for, not because of the money, right? They're, somebody was talking about the other day that, there's only, 100 and something hours of whatever it was that they put up there to go through the academy. Yeah, but you're seeing that most police departments, specifically in Orange County, you're not going to get on the job if you don't have at least an associate's degree. Most likely, you're going to have a bachelor's degree. Um, I work with guys that are police officers that have their PhD. They are the most educated and professional departments that are around are, like, I'm speaking on my ass a little bit, but are I would say in Orange County, from what my experience is, right? On that. So I don't know, Joe. I mean, I think I think we take a look at tactics, right? We talked about this before. In California, once a person is compliant, you have to set them up, because positional asphyxiation is a real deal, right? And even fire departments have killed people back in the day by hog tying, if you will, sandwich boarding them between two backboards, somebody who's a drug addict or something like this. And there's a bunch of stuff that goes along with why somebody dies in the positional asphyxia, right? So yes, and it's really bad, and we watched it happen. I don't say live, but we watched it happen in front of our eyes when George Floyd died, right? So, is defunding, as Joe Matthews with 1T said, the police department, or is taking their ability to do unions, the ability to support candidates, is that, I don't know if that's the right thing. And again, like I said, I don't know if he's even going to stand up, because you have Citizens United that basically says that money's free speech. I know a lot of the unions got mad at that because corporations came out and were able to put money into elections, but that also allows them being unions, put money into elections. Because if, like, again, my take on this is, if you take the ability for the police department to use their union money how they wish, and that means I believe that all public employee unions shouldn't be able to give money the way they wish. Because, and again, I politically speaking, I probably don't agree with much of what unions do, but doesn't mean that if you're going to do one, you should probably do them all. And I'm not. This is not a celebration for me, going, yay, unions can't speak.
But Todd, what are we watching? We're not watching the chief of police of some of these agencies talk on behalf of their agency. It's the police union that does it now. They're the ones that are politicizing the whole atmosphere and fighting back in public opinion. It's like, to me, it's stepping outside the bounds of what I think a police department is and how much power a police department should have. It just scares me, the fact that they're now the authority for that police department. That what they do is fine, and if you cut our funding, then it's not going to be safe for you anymore. Which that's what should be the chief of police's job to say, not the police union. You know,
Yeah, but the police chief is administration. He's working for the mayor, most likely, or for the city manager at least. You know, is normally an at will employee. You know, so it could be let go at any given time. You know, so they're gonna play it safe, right? Um, it's a hard position to be in. You know, at the at this point,
police
you
chiefs are police chiefs are denouncing. They're everyone is saying wrong, 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 murder, murder, murder. You
no,
know, very
we're not,
clearly.
but we're not
And then
talking
when
about George Floyd right now. We're talking about
no, but
the
that's what I'm saying. That's all they're able to do. That's all the chief of polices are able to do right now is comment about Floyd and how he got murdered and how it's wrong. But the way they treat the funding issue and how money is spent, the union steps up and calls people mentally incapable because they're defunding us. You know, that's where I kind of go, who are you and why are you speaking right now?
Well, I mean, look at police officers are taking early retirement, right? I think I just froze. So police officers are taking early retirement. You're seeing a lot of them leave last few weeks, right? And these are articles that are in the paper. You see them leaving special assignments. You see them leaving, um, uh, getting out early. Even if they're not retiring, just don't want to be police officers anymore. Again, like I said, the police officers that you see today are educated. They can do other things other than law enforcement. They have the leadership skills to move into other businesses and do well, right? So what does that mean for law enforcement? So that means like if all of these qualified, seasoned officers are leaving, what is our police department going to look like in the future?
Well, I hope the people that are leaving are the people that don't belong there. You know, that they've done enough damage to that department where they're asked to leave nicely, and the ones that stay are rewarded for staying and are supported for staying and are given the tools to stay. This is about leadership. You know, if they retire because they can't stand the job anymore, then please by all means leave because only the dedicated people deserve to be there. But let's also take care of the people that remain and nurture their training and nurture their attitude and make them better cops as they grow older and wiser in the department.
Yeah, but you see this happening, with teachers, right? And teachers have, I mean, you used to be an elementary school teacher and you left because you couldn't make a real good living with it, right? There's and so there's other jobs that you can go get, and great qualified teachers that are dedicated teachers are leaving for other reasons. But that means that those that stay, I'm not saying they're not dedicated. I mean, it's going to sound demeaning for a minute here, so I'm sure we're going to get beat up a little bit. But are we losing? Are you losing the qualified and quality people, and the people who stay are those that can't do anything other than do not have any other options?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, obviously there's two groups of people there. Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
I agree.
and we could talk about, there one of the articles I was reading that people are saying, oh, police unions only protect the bad cops. Well, I mean, I could say that about teachers unions too, right? I mean, in New York City, and it's so bad that they have this thing called the rubber room, where it's teachers who they don't fire and they just go there and they sit in this purgatory, right? And they get paid to show up and they're just doing weird things. They're not teaching anymore. I mean, and you hear this too, like with law enforcement, you get guys that get reassigned to like BS details, because they were being protected by the union. They can't fire them. So they go and they work like, the McGruff detail and they go around and do that type of stuff. It's not really law enforcement anymore.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard to compare it to a teacher. Like when I was a teacher, I didn't have a license to kill somebody. I didn't have a gun. I didn't have to make specific decisions that could affect a person's life.
What?
You know, how many teachers make nationwide news for putting their knee on a little boy's neck
There's
and
enough
killing
teachers
them?
that make
You know what I mean? So,
nationwide news for molesting children. You know what I
well,
mean?
that's true. That's
You
true.
know, I mean,
That's true.
there's enough of them that are out there that are teaching stuff that's just way freaking crazy that is shaping the children's lives. You know, I mean, that's a whole different story. You know, but
I think it's a different standard. It's a different standard that we put for cops that we do for teachers. I put a cop way above a teacher just because of the authority they have over me personally, what they can do to me in my life personally. A teacher
the
just,
different
I can just have a,
the difference is that the law enforcement officer has the ability to suspend your constitutional rights when they detain you, right? And I understand that, and I understand that they have to have the higher standard, right? And I'm not arguing that by any means, okay? But what I'm saying is that the teachers have the ability to do just as much damage.
I agree. I agree. I just, right now we're talking about police brutality and what it's doing to our nation, and there's people rioting in the streets like we've never seen, and it's a nice diverse crowd and they're all chanting the same things. My son went out there for the first time and he felt so exhilarated to come back to, because he got to express what he thinks is wrong, and he got a chance to express himself. And he's a, you know, he's a 6-year-old little, he's not little, he's almost a man, and he's going to be voting, not this time but next time, and he is in the right mind. He knows where it's at.
Mm. So you stated that the Supreme Court needs to step up. What do you mean?
Well, the Supreme Court has had a law for since 1982, and it's called. Let me get my notes here. Okay, let me read something to you. Uh, When Floyd's family goes to court to hold the officers liable for their actions, a judge in Minnesota may very well dismiss their claims, not because the officers didn't do anything wrong, but because there isn't a case for the Eighth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court specifically holding it that it is constitutional for police to kneel on the neck of a handcuffed man for nearly 9 minutes until he loses consciousness and then dies. Now, the this is called qualified immunity, and the Supreme Court actually met this last week to discuss at least a half a dozen cases before the court involving qualified immunity. The doctrine was created by the doctrine was created by the High Court decades ago, but legal experts calling on the Supreme Court to rethink qualified immunity believe the standard victims must meet to hold law enforcement accountable has become exceedingly difficult to reach. Qualified immunity has become a get out of jail free card. So qualified immunity is something I didn't know about till I did some research, and hopefully they'll be looking at it.
So we take a look at those two Buffalo police officers, that are now in custody. Are they would they fall under the qualified immunity in that case?
Yeah, yeah. There are several cases pending, and I don't have that with me. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here's some of the cases that are involved. This qualified immunity. It's there's one case where an officer stole $225,000. He is using the qualified immunity defense. A cop who shot a 10-year-old while trying to shoot a non-threatening family dog is also under using that as his defense. Prison officials who locked up an inmate in sewage flooded cells for days is also using that defense. So the Supreme Court, like I said, has several items on their docket right now that they're reviewing to either weaken that defense.
So it's almost like the Nuremberg excuse, right? I'm just following orders.
Yeah.
Type. Yeah. Well, it didn't work then.
If you didn't violate the man's constitutional rights, then you're fine.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting take for sure. It's wow. You take a look at some of the issues, but at the same time though, there has to be some protections for law enforcement officers that are out there doing their job, right? And I do hear these stories all the time of the law enforcement officers raiding the wrong house under what they think is good intelligence, and by doing so, they arrest or kill the wrong person, right? You know, what's that mean? I mean, do we charge them now for that? I mean, and I know I've gone over this. On the side, we've talked about this conversation a lot regarding when an officer makes a mistake, and I guess it goes back to your thing about teachers, right? If a teacher does something wrong, it doesn't end up necessarily, ending the life of somebody. So,
Yeah.
So, kind of going down that line of things. When we're talking about criminal justice reform, though, I don't think we should just be talking about the law enforcement. I mean, those guys are on the front lines, and realistically, and this is not a cop out for them, but they are just enforcing the laws that are there. When somebody's doing something, and literally you go, well, okay, you go to court, and the court can change that law, right? The court can go, okay, well, this is, let's talk about marijuana, for instance, right? Where when they arrested people for marijuana possession and whatnot, that was what the law was. Whether the marijuana was harmful or not, that wasn't the debate, right? The thing is the law states you're not allowed to have it. You're doing it, and it kind of brings me. I always think about that. The Untouchables, Sean Connery, and they say, what are you going to do when the laws change to allow alcohol to be used? And Sean Connery's character says, I'm going to have a drink, right? But right now it's against the law, so this is what I'm enforcing. So just because it's when the laws are on the books, and this is where my take on this too, is that we have to take a look at the laws that are in the books. And I think for every law that is passed, we should repeal 10, right? To clean those books up. But then let's look at the reform at the DA's level. DAs, district attorneys, they're political beasts, and they need to win, right, so they can get reelected. And those big cases that come across, sometimes they go after them. They have their own set. By the way, if you guys didn't know this, district attorneys and public defenders, for that matter, but they both have their own investigation teams and their own law enforcement groups. So the DAs, when they go through this thing, they have there's a reason for them to try to win and prosecute people. And you see across the country people who have been wrongfully convicted, right? And there's a groups of people that are out there that are fighting hard for wrongfully convicted people, right? And the attitude, and I have this attitude sometimes, is like, hey, you go through the court system and you get found guilty, they proved your case, right? But then you find out of suppression of evidence, you find out all these type of things that have occurred from the DA's offices. If you remember a few years ago in North Carolina with the Duke lacrosse team, where this prostitute stripper person came forward, said this guy's raped her, and ended up being that she was crazy and made the entire thing up. But yet the DA over there was looking to, and again, this was a racial issue. The DA was over there trying to make it a bunch of white frat boy lacrosse players from Duke University attacking this poor girl, and it never happened. And those kids' lives were ruined, by an overzealous DA. And we see it here in Orange County, right? We see a couple of cases I've known of people who very minor type stuff, who get wrapped up into the court system, and it just becomes a snowball effect, and again, where do we start? And I don't know if we start at the street level, right, which it seems to be everybody wants to do, but we have to look at the DAs. And I was listening to this, and I forget the name of the book, and I'll look it up and we'll talk about it later, where these two professors were talking about reforming the criminal justice system, and they talk a lot about the DA system here. And in the military, in the Navy, Marine Corps, we have I'm guessing it works the same way in the Army and the Air Force. I can't really talk for them. If anybody knows, please chime in. But we have the JAG office, right? And the office of the JAG, you walk in and one day you might be a prosecutor, right? Or one day you might be a defender. And so their take on it is, hey, let's bring, and also I forgot about this part too. The DA's office has, I think, according to their report, has something like 60% more budget than the the public defenders.
Oh, defender.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it's unfair. It's like, the public defender's office, they're struggling just to do their thing, and it's the DA, though, they have the money to do it, and again, it's elected position in a lot of places, and they have bigger budgets, and they have a political agenda not even an agenda, but they definitely have political incentives to convict people, because it's the win ratio, right? You want to have a DA with a high win ratio. Otherwise, what are they doing? And then in some cases, they want to clear that docket quickly, and so they have these plea deals that, in some cases, the innocent people are taking the plea because it's just easier. It's easier to take the plea than it is to fight it. It's cheaper, and you're going to get out of jail, and you might walk away with a misdemeanor conviction instead of a felony conviction if you just say yes to do it.
And I've heard that conversation can be as quick as 5 minutes right before they go up for their hearing, where they'll actually sit and they'll talk to them for 5 to 10 minutes and say, here's the deal. You're going to take it? Yes or no? Yes or no? Are you going to take it? Yes or no? And then they walk into the judge and he says, yep, I'll take it. That happens a lot. I've heard it happens a lot in Orange County. I've heard from friends.
I'm sure it happens in for sure in Orange County, yeah, I just don't know. I don't know what the answer is, Joe. I'd like to
Well,
see.
the police, have to get along with the DA or they can't do their jobs. And that relationship has to be a positive one. But if we, if I could go on to what I was gonna read you something that a couple of DAs from the north have decided to get together as a group from different counties, and what they're trying to establish is that they wrote a letter to the state bar exam asking that no money be allowed to be used. They can't accept money into their campaigns. That they can't. It can no longer be a part of the process. So no money from the unions, no money from the corrections union, nothing can be. So the DA has the ability to say, hey, I just can't accept it. And then, but can we still be friends? Can we still get along? Is the money that so important that we can't have a healthy relationship and get things done?
Yeah, and you're seeing that call here in Orange County. Roughly half of Orange County's 34 cities have seen residents take to the streets and protest. And there's also been the increasing in focus on police budgets among the protesters. And there is the Thurgood Marshall Bar Association, which is for Black attorneys, and what that group, the Thurgood Marshall Bar Association, has said, we want to see some real investment in the community, particularly in the Black community and the minority community, and we believe that the funds and resources should be geared towards reform and supporting our minority community. Now, the Black population in Orange County is less than 2%, but you take a look at the Latino Hispanic community, which is larger than that. with Santa Ana being somewhere like around 71 Hispanic. So, you know, we see these issues coming up. We see, you know, the people going to the street for this. It's definitely a really hard conversation to have. You know, and again, like I was saying, I don't know what the answer is, Joe. I don't think defunding the police department is the way to go. If we're going to attack the union, we need to go across the board to all public unions, not just public safety unions, and maybe we just need to complete, you know, public employment reform like we did, you know, back in the 1930s. You know, nonpartisan. We try to be nonpartisan in California, which is I think is BS because no one's really nonpartisan, even though the elections say nonpartisan across them. But I don't know, where do we start, Joe?
I think we start with the money. I mean, getting back to those DAs, the woman that actually ran, what was her name? San Francisco DA Chelsea Bowden. The union spent $650,000 so she wouldn't win, but she did. And you know, one of those other DAs is George Gaston. He's a former DA from San Francisco who's now running against Jackie Lacey, in LA's district attorney race, and they've already spent $1 million trying to keep him from getting that place too. So the money, the money, the money.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us this Monday morning, talking about a really, really super hard subject regarding law enforcement reform, regarding, you know, what happens now. There is a political momentum going forward for this. You're seeing protesters in Orange County talking about the same stuff. You know, again, this is Todd DeVoe with Joe Matthews, with producer Brian over there. And hey, everybody, you have a wonderful and safe rest of your week.